want Sean to introduce himself, and we'll just look through some of his work. This is a picture of Sean and his dog, because that's what you find when you Google Sean. You don't find his Marvel work, you don't find Spider-Man, you find Sean and his dog.
About 80% of my Instagram is just is pictures of my dog, interspersed with the occasional like, oh, I'm busy drawing this right now, but here's more pictures of my dog. Yeah, so I'm a dog person, clearly.
This is some of your work from the Avengers comic that came out this week, right?
Yeah, it's Avengers Monsters Unleashed came out this week. And I just, last week I finished an issue of Deadpool. Anyways, I'm Sean, hi. And pretty much, I'm not even going to give you like the long form story of how I got into comics, but short-ish version, which is like maybe half an hour long, is my parents collected comics when I was young. And so that was my first real exposure to comic books, and I kind of just fell for it. I think because I was really young at the time, I was like 3 or 5 or something. It was like the colors that attracted me first, and then afterwards it was like, I want to know why is this guy punching this other guy in the face? I need to figure this out and know why it's happening. And so I would sit and just kind of copy what I saw and try and draw it bigger. So there's like an issue of John Romita Sr. Spider-Man where I would take a picture about this big and I would draw it on A4. And that was like how I first started, like, okay, this is kind of what I want to do. And I've never deviated from that. No, I've had like a lot of jobs from like retail and also like graphic design and that, and everything was just I saw everything as just another step to get to comics. You know, even like the worst job, it was like, what was the purpose of this job? For example, I worked in a CD shop for a while. And the money I got from that, I used to pay to go to evening classes to learn graphic design for about a year. So it was like 9 to 6 work, and then 6 to 9 would be college. And because I knew that trying to get to make a living on comics, because I mean this was still quite a while ago. But this is like 15 years ago. Fuck it. I don't want to give away my age, hey? Fuck. So like comics weren't a thing. It's like my whole goal was to try and get overseas and do comics, because over here it was just too difficult for me to do it. And so eventually I got my degree. I got a graphic design job, and I was like, okay, this graphic design job will pay the bills while I can draw comics in the evenings. And that's pretty much what I do. Like whatever spare time I had, I was always just drawing comics, character designs of my own, drawing some fan art, doing commissions for people.
And I actually remember when I first met you, I was, now like we're going to show age again, like in a sense, right?
How?
Like, it was like 12 years ago, so I was still in like high school. And I remember
Ooh.
the mic suddenly just all go off? Feels like they did.
Okay, there we go, back. We're back.
Yeah. So I remember getting you to draw a Spider-Man for me. You were doing commissions at like some event. I was like, yeah, here's $50. Like, draw me a Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I still have that somewhere, like, it's shoved between some things somewhere.
Didn't I draw Gambit for a friend of yours as well at the same time?
Yeah. And it's that weird thing to see you now have made like the full sort of journey from that to this. But beyond your Marvel stuff, you've also got, if you want to jump to the next slide, you've also co-created a character called Stray.
Yeah, he was like a big, I don't know, like entry, like it was a big learning curve. So the way I ended up getting Marvel work was there's like 3 or 4 different paths that all kind of converged to the point where I could do it. One was I got retrenched, lost my job like 7 years ago, and instead of like the company kind of retrenched like 20 odd people, and everybody was like super upset because it was one of those things where it's like, oh, today's Wednesday, Friday's your last day, sorry, we can't give you any money, okay, bye.
What do we say about fuck the man, right?
Yeah, fuck those guys. So, but I was very positive. Like obviously people were upset and they had families and all that stuff, and I just took it as a sign like the universe doesn't want me here. Like I'm wasting my time. I'm sitting here doing this job, and like I can design. I'm a pretty good graphic designer, but I'm always an illustrator first. And so after that, I was like, okay, now's the time to try and make things work. And it was a struggle for like over a year. I was making between like 1,000 to 3,000 rand a month just doing commissions, and then I'd pick up like a newspaper and I'd see like a graphic design job, and I'd be like, pick up my phone and do our phone and try, and I'm like, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So I struggled on, and after about a year, I started getting work as a storyboard artist. So I would do a lot of storyboard work for adverts and stuff. And also during that period of time, a couple of things were happening. One was I did artwork for an online comic called Gutters. And it was just like a page, but I saw that they were paying. And I said, like, listen, here's some samples of stuff that I've done. What do you think? And they were like, sweet, can you do 2 pages for us? So I did that. That comes into play later. Also around about the same time, I made friends with a guy online called Vito Del Sante. And we had the same taste in like comics and characters, and we all wanted to do our own thing. And so we kind of gelled on that, and we were like, no, we should probably work on a comic at some point together. And so I was doing that with him, and there's a long, windy story, but eventually it led to us working and creating Stray, because as you can tell, I'm a dog person, and I was like, why is there no cool dog-themed superheroes? And I'm like, I have this, I want to do one, but there's just like a piece of the puzzle that's missing to make it work as a story. And Vito had that, and so when we spoke about it, it just happened kind of seamlessly, really. So I started working on that. We put some stuff together, put the first issue, basically started a Kickstarter for it, which funded like 3 issues of the 4 that we made. So while I was working on that, it was also like I was learning, because every page you learn something new and you're drawing something different. And like I remember reading somewhere that like the first 100 pages or first 1,000 pages you do are actually crap. Then your stuff gets good.
Are you up to page 100 yet?
Probably. Probably.
Yeah, it is 1,000, eh? It's 1,000.
It's 1,000 something, yeah. And so that was the one route where I was working that way. Also, at the same time, I was sending samples to Marvel regularly, and they would send, like, I'd send 4 pages, and they'd be like, "That's great, but you're weak over here. You need to make sure your characters look consistent. Their faces need to look consistent in different angles, in different pages, in different panels." And I'd be like, "Okay, sweet. Go and do another 4. Send it back. What's this?" They're like, "Oh, that's great, but you're zooming in too much because you're trying to cheat and not draw backgrounds. Maybe zoom out a little bit." Be like, "Okay, fine. Do another 4. Send it again." And so it was like a back and forth, and they always kept in touch, and they were very, very friendly and very, very helpful. So back to the Gutters page that I did. Eventually, the editor on those pages or on that website ended up working for another company called Dynamite. And he, like, an opening came up on a book called Pathfinder, and said he remembered me, and he said, "Hey, do you want to try out for this book?" And I said, "Oh, great, thanks, man." And this was like a 2-year gap between doing Gutters and then working on Pathfinder. And I did like a couple of samples, and they loved it, and I ended up doing issues of Pathfinder with a writer called Jim Zub. And
Jim Zub, just so everyone knows, Jim Zub is basically now one of the probably like biggest rising stars in American comics. Like he's doing a lot of amazing work. He does a book called Wayward at Image, which is really successful. So like basically ending up working with him was like a lucky strike, because he ended up being quite a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, back then he was I think the only comic he had out at the time was Skull Kickers.
Yeah.
And that was taking up a lot of his time, and he now was doing like a couple of jobs for the Pathfinder comic. So I worked with him on that. And eventually it kind of got to the point where like he was putting out more comics, working from like his own creator and stuff, and working for the big guys. And Stray did really well. We did like a 4-issue miniseries. We did a big crossover, which I ended up writing and drawing an issue in. And we're still working on some stuff for future Stray stuff. But what eventually happened was also like last year, I started resending new samples. I contacted the Marvel guys, and I'm like, "Hey, here's some of new samples. It's been a couple of years, but here's some new stuff I've done. Let me know what you think." And they were like, "That's cool. Here's a script so we can see how you draw our characters." And the script was 5 pages, but I got so busy that it took me, I think, 8 months to draw those 5 pages. And the thing is, I always kept in touch with them. I was like, "Listen, I'm sorry, I could do. I want to do these pages like really, really good, but I got to do paying work first. I got bills to pay." And they were like super cool. They were like, "That's fine. Just put your best foot forward, and like, how many pages can you do at a time?" And so I said to him, I could do like 4 pages a week comfortably. And so eventually I finally finished those 5 pages, and the guy said, like, "I'm showing it to people around the office. They really like it. I think we're going to find something for you to do." Also, pretty much this was within like a month or 2 period. Jim was working on Thunderbolts for Marvel, and he recommended me and a couple of other artists because his artist needed to take a bit of a breather. And out of, I don't know how many people, I didn't actually ask because I felt it was rude. They were like, hey, do you want to do these 2 issues of Thunderbolts for us? And I was like, someone's trying to trick me, right? This is a joke, right? Ashton Kutcher is going to jump out any minute.
I don't think people are like
They probably don't, but anyway.
people are like too young for that reference.
Yeah, shut up, man. Don't make me feel old, okay? I'm young inside.
All right.
And
Sure.
I did those 2 issues, and that kind of led to them saying like, hey, would you like to work on Avengers? Would you like to do this issue of Deadpool? And it took years for this stuff to happen because like he was obviously mentioning me in the office, and my samples were going around, and I think just kind of all the work I'd done the past 7 years kind of got together, and there was this big like convergence that's allowed this thing to happen for me.
And now you can go to a comic store and go buy an issue of Avengers by you, which is great.
Oh, as a thing, I'm doing a signing tomorrow at a comic shop if anybody does want to buy any copies.
Nice one. So you never stop
That's
illustrating.
real, right?
That's real. It's at a comic shop called Cosmic Comics from 10 to 11 tomorrow. I think they have a lot of copies of my Thunderbolts and Avengers issues if you want to come and buy some and get some signed and chat a bit.